I'm the new rules attorney is the title that I've been given. So over the next couple of years, we'll be doing all the sunset implementation together. And beyond that, we'll continue to make our rules better and better. And so if you have questions, issues, anything like that, anything rule related, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And so with that, I have up here with me Thomas and Victor as subject matter experts, so they'll be here to answer specific questions about some of the rules. Let's kick it off with rules 41.18 and 41.19, the draft rules about retailer samples. These implement the new alcoholic beverage code sections 1407 and 1408, and I will let Thomas explain them. They're pretty straightforward.
They are. So this is part of HB 1997, allowing distilleries to pull product from their own inventory to take to retail for sample, and allowing the non-resident sellers to do the same thing with their distilled spirits products. The big distinction and really what this rule does is in 41.18, it says the distillers may get product from their own inventory. And we're using the word may there because that distillery in the state is going to have the authority to either pull it from his own inventory, or he could go get it maybe at the wholesaler if the wholesaler is willing to sell it to him, or he could go get it from a package store. Either way, the state excise taxes are paid on it, and he does have the authority to pull it directly from his own inventory. And then the second part is about the taxes and what's first sale, and it's really just tying it back to Chapter 200, which assesses excise tax. So we're saying whatever comes through, they have to pay the excise tax on. So any questions on that one? So 41.19 does a similar thing for the non-residents, but it prohibits the non-resident seller from shipping distilled spirits in directly. So any samples that the non-resident seller is going to take to a retailer, he's got to get from an in-state wholesaler, which would be his wholesaler, or a package store. That ensures the excise taxes get paid. Tyler.
What if the wholesaler doesn't have the product?
So if the wholesaler doesn't have the product, and this is just distilled spirits, you got to get it to him. Because the wholesaler is the only one who has the authority to actually pay the state excise taxes on the products. The non-resident seller is not set up that way. The code doesn't speak to it that way. So that's where we're forcing everything through the wholesaler. Fair enough. And I made a mistake in this rule. So in B, I did say shall, which was intentional. I said they've got to buy it either from the package store or get it from their wholesaler. But I put in their wine-only package store, and distilled spirits obviously aren't sold at wine-only package stores. So please disregard that, and we will get it fixed. Any questions about either of those two? Concerns? Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to items 3 and 4. These rules are implementing new alcoholic beverage code section 5.361. There are kind of two parts of that. One part is that the legislature wants us to make sure we inspect every licensed premise at a certain frequency and establish that frequency. And the second part of that section of the bill instructed us to come up with a way of prioritizing higher risk premises to make sure that they get inspected. So I will let Victor talk about this set of rules.
Okay, so the first one, the sunset bill that was passed, established that TBC has to establish a time frame in order to conduct all the physical inspections across the state. And this rule implements that bill and lists that has to be done every 6 years. I guess I'll stop there and just see if there's any questions about that before we go on to the next one. Okay. And so the next one, TMC was required to determine inspections based on risk-based approach, prioritizing for public safety. You can read through there, taking into account the type of permit they have, location, history, etc. And it even talks about defining priority locations We are currently already utilize priority locations for enforcement-based inspections, priority public safety inspections. But the relevance of this rule here is it allows the possibility of these inspections being done virtually. This is kind of ties back into our compliance reporting app, and allows us to turn around and determine whether or not they can be done virtually or they need to be done physically, etc. So like, even though you may conduct a compliance reporting app, if we're doing the back to school stings as an example that we just did, and we targeted locations that were closer to like universities and stuff, and that's where number 2 would come into play, because those are locations commonly visited by college-age youth. And so even though you may have completed the compliance reporting app, you may still be subject to an inspection in the form of a underage compliance operation or a minor sting. Questions about that? And of course, the prior locations, you know, they're defined there for you, but basically it goes on the prior violations, whether or not we have a current complaint against that location. And some businesses identify when they first go into business for the first 2 years, they have a propensity to have a higher violation rate than others. So those are designed to just make sure they're on track and not committing any violations and getting them off to a good start in the industry.
Questions, concerns? All right.
On the setting up the priority 9 finding, is there going to be a continuous review of that so that locations could get on or off that list?
That's correct. What it is it's a logic that's built into our computer system, and based on time frames, last time you had a violation. In this case here, it's like if you had a violation for public safety in the last 6 months, you'll be on this priority list. If you don't commit any more violations, you come off of it. And so it's a constant loop of information. It's real time. So yeah, you come off, you don't stay on it forever, unless you continue violating.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Victor. On to item 5. This one's pretty straightforward as well. It's implementing a new Alcoholic Beverage Code 5.21, which just gave the commission the authority to put together some advisory committees. And this really just puts that into our rules in a very basic way. We haven't established any yet. We don't have any idea what they're going to look like yet. So this is just getting it into the rules so that we can start that process and the commissioners can decide how they want to do that. Any issues, questions, concerns? All right. Now here's the fun one.
You got one.
Oh, you got one, Tyler?
Why not more than 9 members?
Well, we just wanted to not get them unwieldy because they can have as many as they want. So if they need, but a larger number is fine too. You know, it's just kind of don't want them to get too unwieldy. We want them to have an odd number so that for quorum issues. Do you think that, is it your opinion it should be more, or?
Well, I guess it depends on what, how many advisory committee hearings.
Right.
Just think of Colorado. I pulled up the list. Colorado has their advisory committee, and it's, I think, 20 something, which might be a little unwieldy, but at the same time, not everybody goes, and
They just have one?
they just have one.
Right. So I think the 9 is in, thinking that we're going to have several that may be, located in different places or made up of different folks. So.
Probably safe to assume that Tyler's now not going to be on one of those.
Right. Thank you for your question. But we may want to check in with the chairman and see what he thinks about that. If he wants a bigger group. Okay. Item 6, we're talking about establishing the alcohol delivery driver training program under the consumer delivery permit. Let me flip to that one. This is implementing Senate Bill 1450. Essentially, this just lays out that we will have a training program and what the purpose of that is. This does not say anything about what's in the training program. That's still being developed. This rule does not have anything to do with the app that's required. We have to select a vendor to help with that. So this is sort of the first rule, and I expect that there will be more, at least one that describes liability issues as well. So this is kind of step one in that direction. We're only talking here about consumer delivery permit. Mixed beverage permittees can, they have a separate that was the first section of Senate Bill 1450. They have a separate ability to deliver that doesn't require the consumer delivery permit. So this is just about that new chapter 57 consumer delivery permit that your Lyfts and Ubers and Favors of the world are going to have. And so let's talk first about just this rule, and then we'll get into other issues that you foresee or that you're concerned about with that program as we go forward. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or concerns about the way this rule is drafted? Yes.
Doesn't a seller server certificate for like a regular retail employee last 2 years?
It does.
And this expires in 1 year.
Correct.
They probably get a lapse a lot if they expire that quickly.
I don't know if that's involved.
We stick it in here.
Yes, but and under the alcohol driver training program, you know, once you use a consumer direct permit holder, the retail location that passes it off, they also pass off the liability to that individual or that company. And so there's an educational aspect that needs to be implemented, part of them, because, you know, self-serve training applies to the retail locations. This will apply for those consumer direct permit holders. So is your recommendation that it be looped about 2 years to mirror self-serve training?
I just don't know why they need to be different.
Okay, we'll consider that. Thank you.
You contemplate that the seller server training that retailers get will be able to be their own drivers will be able to use that to sense.
So like right now, mixed beverage locations that have a food and beverage certificate that can deliver a meal and alcohol with a meal, right? So their exceptions fall under the seller server training because they are the retail location.
Okay.
So the safe harbor exceptions and stuff that apply to that is because through seller server.
But that will apply to the
Because they themselves are the ones making the delivery. They're not passing it off to a third party. This puts the liability on the third party, so there needs to be education for the third party.
So right, so the seller server, safe harbor and all of that will not apply to the consumer delivery permit of drivers. Okay.
So the training that they currently get right now, seller server will apply to them as drivers as well, or delivering alcohol.
That are being done by the retailer.
Yes.
That would be correct.
Mixed
So if
beverage.
there's a person
permit.
who maybe works at a bar and has seller server for that, and then moonlights driving for
No.
these, they'll need 2 certificates.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I would just echo the comment about having the time period mirror the seller server.
Any other questions or comments about the language of this particular rule, draft rule? Okay, at this time, we wanted to open up the floor to talk a little bit more broadly about the consumer delivery driver program. There are a lot of issues and questions, and how is it going to work? We don't have answers to those questions yet. What we'd like to do is actually talk about what those questions are that you have and what the issues you foresee are, so that we can be proactive about addressing them, and instead of reactive when they come up. So I'd really like for all of you that have thought of something, you're not sure how it's going to work, to express that right now. We're going to take it down, and as we develop further rules and maybe some FAQs or things like that, that we can have those in mind and get them answered.
Question I get on call from the Restaurant Association or our members is quantity. How much alcohol can be delivered?
Right now it's 375, so you're talking about the,
Quantity, not
Oh.
like how many bottles of wine, how many beers can be delivered with, 2 entrees.
We're going to limit it to 1. The statute, I mean, the bill.
I know what I'm telling you.
I know, that's, Jared and I were talking about that this morning, actually. That's how bad stuff gets started. We had that conversation. The bill did not address any kind of limitation. So it wasn't the agency's intent, at least at this, I'm speaking broadly when I make this statement, but as far as that goes, we're not under the impression or deciding at this point to take any kind of position to limit it. Yeah. We figure prices will probably take care of that. So.
Is the agency going to develop anything for wet dry other than the spreadsheet that's out there? How could you? I don't know.
We need an appropriation for that,
Probably.
probably.
I mean, because the wet,
Yeah.
all that's available now, of course, is the spreadsheet. You can't tell addresses.
No, you can't. I mean, one of the things we'd like to be able to do when we replace our licensing system is to put in GIS mapping and all that and overlap this stuff on there. But it's going to take time. Even if we could get there, that would be the goal. Whether it'll happen or not anytime soon.
So the statute has an affirmative defense delivering in the wrong area. Is that just going to be, I checked the spreadsheet?
I think in here it says that it's a rebuttable presumption or something. I'm trying to read this on a tiny screen.
if I can address your question though, the agency is always striving for compliance. I think that if we find issues, what we would do is notify whatever company is delivering and say, look, this area is not wet. And that way, if a repeated violation occurs, then you would face sanctions.
So it says that it's a defense to prosecution alleging that an individual delivered an alcoholic beverage under this chapter to an address located in an area that is dry for the type of beverage delivered if the individual or holder of the consumer delivery permit relied on publicly available information produced by the commission.
Right, that's it.
That's the spreadsheet.
So the local data is more specific than what TABC says. TABC doesn't. That's what we'll do. The agency, the better info.
What other implementation questions have arisen for your clients? If you think of more, and I'm sure you will, please email me or give me a call. Shana.horton@tabc.texas.gov. We're keeping a list, and we're going to try to address as many of those as we can early on, meet it head on. So that's all we had to talk about today. Does anyone have anything else they need to say about it?
Timeline, when do you think the consumer delivery application or permit starts?
The application, there's a draft out there right now. Yeah, so the real one will be out there like December 1st after the commission votes, assuming they vote to adopt at the end of November, it'll be ready to go December 1st. So as soon as everybody submits their stuff, so the first one could be issued, I don't know, sometime like that.
The draft doesn't have company pages. Are those going to be just the company pages, or are there not going to be company pages for these? So it's sort of almost like a known applicant kind of process, because you're not going to have other officers. That's possible.
So we intend to put these up for publication at the November commission meeting, have them consider them for publication, and then in a couple months, we'll have them up for adoption. So that's the timeline on these. And then we'll have another batch for you. So, all right, if there's nothing else from the audience, then we will go ahead and close the meeting. Everybody have a great weekend.